Joining us right now is the COO of that threat to democracy, Jeffrey Wernick, and he's one of the guys behind Parler, which I'm over at Parler. If you haven't created your account at Parler, I don't know. I guess you're just waiting to get deplatformed. But Jeffrey joins us via Skype. Jeffrey, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I have to get your reaction to that video clip where they were talking about your company, your entity, Parler. It's a threat to democracy, Jeffrey. When did you become like enemy number one?
Well, I think that they are the real enemies of a constitutional republic because they don't understand the Bill of Rights and they don't understand that the only way we can have a vibrant representative government is through debate and discourse and diversity of opinions, and that what we win is that we win in the marketplace of ideas. The whole point of it is the government is supposed to be embedded about representing the will of the people by basically repressing half the population from being able to express their preferences. Doesn't seem to me that that's a democracy. They would like to have a society where basically maybe their definition of a democracy now is a winner-take-all society, is that you fight in the elections and to the extent that whoever wins gets absolute control and uses whatever force they can to repress the rest of the population to make sure that they're in compliance with the language that should be used and the thoughts that are acceptable thoughts. So I'm amused by what they view as their definition of our form of government, because it is a constitutional republic and there are a Bill of Rights, and they don't seem to have significant respect for either the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. And somehow you're a threat to our form of government by having some respect for the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, no one, and you've never stopped any of them from creating an account either. That's why they act as though the intimation is that this is somehow like an exclusive service only for people who are ideologically like-minded, and it's specifically opposite that. Correct?
Correct. We want everyone to be on. We don't have any algorithms. So we're not doing anything that's moderating anybody's experience on the platform. We're just basically, we believe that there is a right in the digital domain for there to be a free speech platform. But not only there be a free speech platform, there's a platform out there that is not a surveillance company. Okay, so we don't do any surveillance of people. We don't have any algorithms. We're not trying to manipulate anybody's experience on the platform. We will let everybody else create their own experience on the platform. So to the extent that there are, quote, moderation tools, the moderation tools are for every person on Parler. They get to moderate their own experience.
Right.
So they get to determine who they want to mute, who they might want to block, what language they find acceptable and unacceptable. And they have very powerful tools under which they can create a very personalized experience that is the experience that they're looking to do, and we don't make any of those decisions on their behalf. We're doing no surveillance of them. We're making no efforts to necessarily influence any outcome on it. We don't believe, unlike what Jack Dorsey and Zuckerberg said, that the future is getting better at content curation and moderation and whatever euphemisms they came up with is through artificial intelligence, and algorithmic stuff. Okay. We basically believe in the principles embedded in our Bill of Rights, and that these are people's preferences, and that we want to be able to give people the ability to express their preferences independent of whatever those preferences are, as long as those preferences don't violate the law.
Yeah, and see, and that's the thing to point out with.
They think preserving the democracy is making sure that they control the public square on their terms. So I think that's really absurd.
I agree with you. And I want to point out, we're speaking with Jeffrey Wernick, COO of Parler, which you need to open your account. I am up there as well, Dana Lash. Your term, the only thing that Parler doesn't allow is stuff that is considered unprotected against liability. Whereas Twitter and Facebook and all of these other platforms, and I just got literally like last hour, I got an email from Instagram. They had already modified their terms of service. So, and MailChimp and all of these other services, it's vague, it's purposely vague and arbitrary. It's basically if they don't like something or if they think that it could contribute to some kind of exclusivity, then people have no idea where they stand with any of these companies. But with your company, as I've read the terms of service, it's just don't break the law, just don't be stupid, and you're fine.
Exactly. Matter of fact, I'll go even further than that. They what Facebook and Twitter does, and what and Google as well. They have a terms of service, but they have a terms of service that's so broad in nature that ultimately they say is here are a bunch of rules, but in addition to all these other rules, basically I'm going to do whatever I want to do at any point in time I want to do it for any reason I want to do it. Okay. Because ultimately, how they're making these decisions, as they acknowledged in the testimony, what did Jack Dorsey say? Jack Dorsey said, we have clear terms of service, but the way we apply them are very opaque. He used the word opaque. I'm not putting words in his mouth. That's the word he used to describe how they're applying their own terms of service.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg basically, was when they were asking more details about this aspect of this, he was tongue-tied. And then when they got into the issue of how much are they acting in concert, there's a pretty good circumstantial case that they are acting in concert. And they certainly haven't included us in those conversations.
No.
I think with respect to us, we have a community jury system. We have a volunteer community jury system. So when we write our terms of service, okay, the enforcement of those terms of service are not John or myself or Amy Peacock, our chief policy officer. We have no role in the process of the enforcement of the terms of service. The terms of service are enforced by jurors. So we need to have a terms of service that is clear enough for them to be able to implement and enforce. Yeah. They don't moderate, they don't curate, they don't ban people. Right. All they've got to do is when people file reports, and we don't have algorithms, so we're not hunting for people. If people on the platform think other people on the platform are doing things that they think violate the terms of service or making their experience not what the experience they hope to have, they file a report. That report goes to our community jury system. They're volunteer community jurors. We put a lot of effort into training them and an ongoing training of them. And their role is to basically apply the terms of service.
Do you gather them from regular
and you
users?
assign points, so it's not like one and done. If people are doing some violation, there's very clear delineation of how many points there are.
Right.
And then people get notified that they got points. And so certain things are like 2 points, certain things are 10 points. And if people accumulate 20 points, then they're banned. But to be banned, you have to be making a conscious effort to be banned.
If you're engaging like defamation and libel.
So anyone who is getting banned is trying hard to be banned. They're basically thumbing their nose in the terms of service, and they're inviting to be banned. And probably why they're doing it, right. They want to sit back and say, Parler isn't really a free speech platform, so let me do everything I can to violate every terms of service of threatening and whatever.
Yeah.
And let me accumulate the points, and let me take a screenshot of me being banned.
Which is such a bad argument. And I want to ask you, because we're starting to run out of time, and I want to ask you about the Section 230 stuff. But to your point, I mean, that's so silly because you're not stopping them from making that speech. It's just it's not protected, and you're not going to deal with it. I want to get how you felt when. Because all of this whole thing, everything that we're seeing yesterday with the hearings and all this stuff, it all goes back to Section 230. And while I don't want 230 repealed, I definitely think it should be modified. Because how is it? It doesn't seem fair, and I want your reaction on this. It doesn't seem fair to me to have platforms like yours which do everything that they're supposed to do. You're not a publisher. You are not doing editorial through algorithms, which that is a form of editorialism, regardless of whether or not people want to admit it. But you're not engaging in any of that. And you, companies like that just provide the straight, no chaser services, they have those 230 protections. But it seems like you have the Facebooks and the Twitters that are wrapping themselves in this veneer of providing just a platform when really they're acting like a media entity. And they are, by way of manipulating everything behind the veil. They are editorializing and they're behaving more like a publisher. So why should they be exempt from any kind of liability when they're actually creating news through their actions? But they're going to ruin it for you and everyone else. Like they're going to ruin this for everybody because of political bias. How does that make you feel?
Well, I think with respect to 230, I don't think 230 needs to be modified. I think Justice Thomas has already come up with a really well-reasoned piece on the difference between content distribution and content creation, and the ambiguities or the bright lines between those two. And so I think if you take a look at what Justice Thomas has written about and opined about with respect to how he views Section 230, I think the door has already been opened up to the context of the fact that they are a publisher, that whatever label they put on themselves, if you look at the activities they're doing, that they definitely are a publisher, and 230 doesn't protect the publisher. So the problem, I think, is not the law itself. The problem is that we need to enforce the existing law better than we have, and hopefully we have better judges who will take a look at what Justice Thomas has opined on and use that as probably the most authoritative interpretation of 230 that is probably consistent also with comments that Reed Hunt has made, who was around at the time in 1996, at the FCC when 230 was created. So Reed Hunt himself has said how 230 is being applied today, is not consistent with what the expectation would be applied at the point in time it was created. So I think the problem is not the words. I think the problem is the application of the words. And I don't want to change the words. I'd rather just make sure that we begin applying the words a lot better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Facebook specifically in a lawsuit, in defending itself against the defamation lawsuit, has called itself a publisher. So under oath, Facebook has described itself as a publisher. So why should there be any dispute over that they're a publisher?
That's a great
given
point.
the fact that under oath they describe themselves as a publisher, why would any court take a look at something that they've said under oath, and say that? Even Zuckerberg, when he's had testimony, when he's described himself, he's not come out and just said we're a platform, we're a media tech company. So he's given very different answers to Congress under oath, and I think he has a hard time himself of describing himself, as a platform. But that's why they want to change 230. What they want to do is right now there's a risk that they are publishers, so they want to change 230. So to the extent that they might not be covered anymore in 230, they want to make sure that they can use their influence in Washington to reduce 230 so they can continue to be covered. Or what they can do is not only be covered, they could deter competition, which I think they also want to do.
Yeah,
they can make saying to comply with 230, you can make the compliance costs worth billions of dollars. So essentially nobody can come in and attempt to compete with them because to be subject to the limitation of exemption might be so onerous that it basically would have killed competition.
Yeah. We are out of time. Jeffrey Wernick, who is the COO of Parler, go and create your account. I know that engagement explodes when you go over there, so you can immediately see how much you're throttled everywhere else. It's true organic engagement, which is awesome, and you just get to see everybody and actually talk to people. Unlike it's actually kind of difficult to do on the older platforms anymore. Jeffrey, appreciate what you do, and I hope that I know that the company's continuing to grow, and that's awesome to see. So we're so glad that we have this alternative out there. Jeffrey Wernick, good to see you, my friend.
Much.